My friends, have you ever felt like you were losing? Like no matter how hard you tried, things just won't work out? Maybe you've been struggling for years, praying for a breakthrough, waiting for things to turn around, but instead you've been met with disappointment, with failure, with defeat. But let me tell you something today, the game has completely flipped. What was once against you is now working for you. The battle you thought you lost has turned into your greatest victory. Where the enemy tried to destroy you, God is lifting you up. My friends, there comes a moment in life when everything shifts, when the odds that were stacked against you begin to crumble, when the weight of your struggle starts to lift. And when the very thing that tried to hold you back becomes the very thing that propels you forward, that moment is now. The tables have turned and the game has completely flipped. For so long, you may have felt like you were losing, like you were fighting a battle you couldn't win. You've prayed, you've waited, and you've believed, yet nothing seemed to change. But hear me today, just because it hasn't happened yet, doesn't mean it's not coming. God's timing is perfect, and when He moves suddenly. Think of how life works. A game can seem completely lost until the final moment when something shifts and the losing team comes back to claim the victory. That's exactly what happens when God steps in. What seemed impossible suddenly becomes possible. What seemed like defeat is transformed into triumph. Look at the story of Job. One moment he had everything, wealth, health, family, and honor. The next moment it was all taken from him. He lost everything. His friends doubted him. His body was covered in pain. And maybe you've felt like Job at times, like life just keeps taking from you, like everything you built is crumbling, like the battle is too much to bear. But listen, God was not finished with Job, and He is not finished with you, because in just a moment, everything turned around. The tables flipped, and Job received back twice what he had lost. The pain he endured was not the end of his story. It was just the setup for a greater blessing. And the same God who restored Job is still working today. Your pain will not be wasted. Your suffering is not in vain. The game is flipping in your favor. Maybe you've been rejected, overlooked, or underestimated. Maybe people have counted you out. But what they don't know is that God has the final say. When God shifts things, no enemy can stop it. No opposition can block it. No circumstance can hold it back. The very people who doubted you will have to watch as God elevates you. I think of David, just a shepherd boy, forgotten even by his own family. When the prophet Samuel came to anoint a king, David wasn't even invited into the room. His own father didn't see him as worthy. But hear me, man's rejection is often God's redirection. While others saw a shepherd, God saw a king. And in one moment, David went from tending sheep to stepping into his destiny. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what battle you're facing, but I do know this. God is not done with you. The same power that raised Jesus from the grave is at work in your life. The same God who flipped the situation for Joseph, David, and Job is flipping your situation today. So stand firm, keep believing, keep praying, keep expecting, because the tables have turned, the shift has begun, and what was against you is now working for you. The game has completely flipped. From defeat to victory, my friends. Life often feels like a battle. You push forward, you fight hard, you do everything in your power to succeed, but sometimes, despite all your efforts, you still feel like you're losing. You look around and see others moving ahead while you remain stuck. You feel like you've been knocked down one too many times. But I have good news for you today. Defeat is not your final destination. What looks like the end is just the setup for your greatest victory. All throughout history, the greatest victories have come after the greatest struggles. Think about the most powerful moments in the Bible. Time and time again, God's people faced situations where it looked like they had lost. But just when things seemed over, God stepped in and flipped the script. Look at Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and locked away in prison. If anyone had a reason to feel defeated, it was Joseph. But what did God do? He used every setback as a stepping stone for a comeback. One moment, Joseph was in a prison cell. The next, he was standing in the palace. As the second most powerful man in Egypt, the game had flipped. The very people who threw him away had to come back and ask for his help. And when they did, Joseph declared something powerful God meant for good. Genesis 50:20. My friends, I don't know what battles you've faced. I don't know what people have done to you or what situations have tried to break you. But I do know this. God specializes in turning defeat into victory. Maybe you've faced loss of a job, loss of a relationship, loss of a dream. Maybe you've been fighting an internal battle with fear, doubt, or anxiety. Maybe you feel like no matter what you do, nothing ever changes. But let me remind you today, God has never lost a battle. Think about the Israelites at the Red Sea. They had just escaped Egypt, but Pharaoh's army was closing in behind them. In front of them was the sea. No way forward, no way back. It looked like defeat. It looked like the end. But then God did what only He can do. He flipped the situation. The waters parted, and what was once an obstacle became their passage to victory. Failure in your life will become the platform for your testimony. The very thing that was meant to break you is the thing that will build you. The enemy may have tried to take you out, but God is about to lift you up. The very thing that should have destroyed them became the thing that delivered them. And I want to tell you today, God is still flipping situations. What looked like victory is not about what you see right now. It's about what God is doing behind the scenes. You may not see the breakthrough yet, but it's coming. You may feel like you're losing, but hold on, because the game has flipped and victory is on the way. So don't give up. Your struggle is not the end of your story. The pain, the failures, the setbacks, they are just part of the journey. And on the other side is a victory so great that it will erase every tear, every hurt, every moment of doubt. Your defeat is turning into victory. The game has completely flipped. Faith overcomes the odds, my friends. Life will always present challenges that seem too big, too impossible, too overwhelming. The world tells us to measure our strength, to calculate the risks, to rely on what we see. But let me tell you today, faith is not about what you see. It's about who you trust. Time and time again, we see in Scripture that faith is the key that flips the game. The odds may be stacked against you. People may doubt you. The situation may look hopeless. But when faith steps in, the impossible becomes possible. When faith rises, fear must fall. And when faith moves, mountains crumble. Look at David standing before Goliath. The entire army of Israel trembled in fear. The odds were clear. A young shepherd boy versus a giant warrior. There was no logical reason David should have won. But faith doesn't operate on logic, it operates on God's power. David didn't focus on the size of Goliath, he focused on the size of his God. He declared, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." And with one stone, he brought the giant crashing down. My friends, some of you are facing giants right now. Giants of financial trouble, giants of sickness, giants of fear. The enemy is trying to make you believe that you'll never win. But let me remind you, faith is greater than any giant. Faith says, I may not see the way, but I know the one who makes a way. Faith says, I may be outnumbered, but God is on my side. Think about Peter walking on water. As long as his faith was in Jesus, he did the impossible. He walked on the very waves that should have swallowed him. But the moment he looked at the wind and the waves, he began to sink. What does that tell us? The storm isn't what determines your outcome. Your faith does. Maybe life has thrown you into a storm. Maybe the waves are crashing around you and you feel like you're sinking. But hear me today. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep walking in faith. Keep trusting even when you don't understand. Because faith doesn't just help you survive the storm. Faith helps you walk above it. And what about the woman with the issue of blood? 12 years of suffering, 12 years of doctors failing her, 12 years of hopelessness. But then she heard about Jesus. She didn't let the crowd stop her. She didn't let her weakness hold her back. She reached out in faith, and in an instant, everything changed. Maybe you've been waiting for years. Maybe you felt forgotten, overlooked, or too broken to keep going. But I declare to you today, one moment of faith can flip the game. One act of trust can turn your story around. The Bible tells us that faith is the victory that overcomes the world, not strength, not talent, not resources. Faith. Faith is what turns defeat into victory. Faith is what brings breakthroughs. Faith is what causes walls to fall and chains to break. So I ask you today, where is your faith? Are you looking at the size of your problem, or are you looking at the power of your God? Because when you walk in faith, the enemy is trying to make you believe that you'll never win. But let me remind you, faith is greater than any giant. Faith says, I may not see the way, but I know the one who makes a way. Faith says, I may be outnumbered, but God is on my side. So rise up. The game has flipped. Walk by faith and watch how God moves in your life. The enemy is trying to make you believe that you'll never win, but let me remind you, faith is greater than any giant. Faith says, I may not see the way, but I know the one who makes a way. Faith says, I may be outnumbered, but God is on my side. Your struggle was preparation. My friends, I know there are times when the struggle feels unbearable, when life seems unfair, when the weight of disappointment, failure, and hardship presses down so heavily that you wonder if you'll ever rise again. But hear me today, your struggle was not a waste, your pain was not meaningless. Everything you have been through was preparing you for what's coming next. Too often when we go through hardships, we ask, God, why is this happening to me? But what if I told you that what you thought was meant to break you was actually meant to build you? What if I told you that the very thing you cried over was shaping you for your destiny? Look at Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit. If he had never been thrown into the pit, he would have never ended up in Egypt. If he had never been a slave, he would have never managed Potiphar's house. If he had never been imprisoned, he would have never met the man who introduced him to Pharaoh. Everything he went through was positioning him for his destiny. And one day, after years of struggle, the game flipped. Joseph was no longer a prisoner. He was the prime minister of Egypt. The very people who betrayed him had to come to him for help. And Joseph stood before them and said, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Genesis 50:20. My friends, maybe people have hurt you. Maybe life has been unfair. Maybe you face rejection, setbacks, or heartbreak. But I want you to know today, God wastes nothing. Think about David. He was just a shepherd boy tending sheep in the wilderness, overlooked by everyone, including his own family. But what no one realized was that those lonely days in the fields were training him to be a king. Every time he fought off a lion or a bear, he was learning how to be a warrior. Every moment he spent alone in worship. The enemy is trying to make you believe that you'll never win. But let me remind you, faith is greater than any giant. Faith says, I may not see the way, but I know the one who makes a way. Faith says, I may be outnumbered, but God is on my side. And my friend, I need you to hear this. Your struggles are not the end of your story. They are the training ground for your testimony. You may not understand why you had to go through what you did. You may not see the purpose in your pain right now, but one day you will look back and realize that every tear, every trial, every closed door was making you stronger, wiser. The enemy is trying to make you believe that you'll never win. But let me remind you, faith is greater than any giant. Faith says, I may not see the way, but I know the one who makes a way. Faith says, I may be outnumbered, but God is on my side. The game has completely flipped. What the enemy tried to use to stop you, God is using to launch you. What you thought was breaking you is actually preparing you. Your pain had a purpose. Your struggle was preparation. And now it's time to step into your victory. God is the game changer.